Your teen requested a ride, but this time not from you. It's through their Uber teen account. You drive your teenager around, a lot, to their friend Jacob's house, their other friend Jake's house, to James's, to Jaden's, to Jalen's, to...
Mom? This is Jake's house, not Jacob's.
Now with an Uber teen account, your teen can request a ride under your supervision. They'll ride with a highly rated driver, and with live trip tracking, you'll follow along the whole ride to their friends' houses that all sound the same. Add your teen to your Uber account today. See app for details.
Bye, Mom.
Excuse me, can you take a photo of me?
Sure, but if you had the new Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6, you could snap your own hands-free selfies.
Really?
Watch. I just flex it to the perfect angle, set it down, and FlexCam with Galaxy AI automatically zooms for the perfect shot.
Whoa.
Post-worthy.
New profile pic-worthy.
Flex the newest Galaxy AI foldable Z Flip 6. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Samsung account login required. FlexCam length varies and is shorter than standard zoom length. Galaxy AI provided free until end of 2025 on supported devices.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We're going to recap week 3. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm going to just make an appeal to you all if you're listening on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify. Please follow us on Spotify, first of all. Please leave a review. But if you could really help me out and go to YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps get that algorithm up. So if you could please do that, I'd really encourage you to do so. It'll help me out. It'll help the channel out. Make sure that more and more people get to hear this content. So please do that. I'm really asking you if you guys could do that. I try not to over publicize myself or over promote myself, but it would be really great. One of my goals, just so you guys know my goal, is I'd love to get to 1,000 subscribers onto YouTube for several reasons. But that's my goal by the end of this football season. So if you could help me get there, I would definitely appreciate that. Make sure you go to YouTube. It's Big Ten Football Talk. In the show notes, I'll put the link to go to my channel. And also make sure to follow on Spotify. Make sure you listen there as well. Thank you so much for doing that. Let me get to the power rankings. Well, before I get to power rankings and before I get to the recap, I got a few comments that I want to address real quick. One was just a general thought that me and my two guests, Dylan from Boiler Express and Eric from the OHIO podcast, they were dogging some of the Big Ten competition or Big Ten teams, and that was a turnoff for them. For one, I just want to say, in general, I want to try to be as fair as possible to every Big Ten team. That does mean at times I'm going to dog certain teams, and there's going to be a certain team that I dog quite a bit today. And that's because their performance warranted it. There are times, though, that I bring on guests where they're not coming from a unbiased perspective, or at least trying to be unbiased. They're coming from the bias of their fan base and the bias of their team. And sometimes those guests are going to be locked in on that, and they're going to try not to bring that in to their picks. And sometimes they're going to bring it in full. And that's their prerogative. I tell the guests that come on the show, hey, I want your honest thoughts. And if your thoughts are colored, that's okay, because you are coming from a different perspective. That being said, sometimes you're not going to get everybody's, unbiased opinion. They're going to dog different teams, especially if they're rivals. And so Dylan in particular was dogging Indiana. And that's part of their rivalry. So if you're sitting there and you're like, well, this is dumb, I don't want to hear that. Well, I'm sorry, first of all, but that's his prerogative as my guest to come on here. But second of all, recognize that I'm going to try to be fair. Me personally, I'm going to try to be fair to every Big Ten team. But also there are going to be times where your team warrants to be dogged because of their performance. Indiana does not deserve that. And we'll talk about them at the start. The second thing is there was a guy that commented on, basically attacked the character of one of my guests. And I just want to make it clear the rules that I'm setting in place for the comments in my chat are as follows. You can attack ideas. You can attack, you can go after points made and say that that's not okay. Cause that's part of healthy debate. When you start making fun of people, I'm going to shut it down. And when you go after people and not their ideas, that's just not what this show and what the comments are about. And so if that was you, I'm just going to tell you right now, I won't allow it anymore, and I'll block you and I'll report you. So if you want to go after ideas, great. And we can debate ideas for sure. But if you are going to go after the character of my guests or make fun of my guests or make fun of me, like we're just going to lock it down. So that's 4.5 minutes, too much of that stuff, but I just wanted to get it out there. Again, like, subscribe. Let's get to what I liked this past week. And there is a lot to like. There's also a lot not to like, but I'm going to start with Indiana. Indiana's got a quarterback. Indiana's got a good quarterback. Now, I'll be honest, Curtis Rourke, I had not really seen much of because they played subpar competition. And I had heard good things about Rourke, and I knew he did good things at Ohio, but I hadn't really gotten to see him play extended minutes because I didn't get a chance to watch him against Western Illinois. And quite honestly, I don't think Western Illinois, that's going to tell us much. I didn't get a chance to see him play much against Florida International. That being said, Curtis Rourke against UCLA wowed me. I mean, just was astonishingly good. And what impressed me a lot was his poise, right? He's got a good arm. I don't think it's an elite arm. I don't think he's, going to be a first round pick in the NFL draft. I don't think he's Michael Penix good, but his poise just so impressed me. And that first drive against the Bruins, you're on the road. Obviously that first drive is probably scripted. First 15 plays typically are scripted, but gets off script, has third downs. He has to escape. He has to get a snap that goes low and has to pick it up off the ground. And it just seemed like nothing fazed him. It's like, oh, this is my job. I'm going to distribute the ball. I'm going to find the open man and I'm going to make plays. And he did it over and over and over again. And even when he made a bad play, I mean, he threw what should have been a pick in a second or third series. Might have been the third series, threw a pick right to a UCLA defender and missed it. He dropped it. And you think, okay, that's going to rattle him. No, he's not rattled. And again, UCLA, probably one of the worst teams in the conference. We'll say that. And, I'll talk about UCLA here in a few minutes. But I thought Indiana and Curtis Rourke in particular, they really acquitted themselves well on the road, traveling time zones. UCLA had multiple weeks to prepare because of the bye week, and they still came out in all three phases, mind you, and played really, really well. They won 42-13. That wasn't a close game. It was a beatdown, which shows me that Indiana, they are not just edging out the bottom teams of the Big Ten. They are superior to the bottom teams in the Big Ten. And that's a big deal because if you've been a Hoosier for a long time, you've been at the bottom of the barrel. I'll be honest, I would not be surprised if Indiana gets 8 or 9 wins this season based on how they looked. Now, again, it's UCLA. We could easily overreact over the first 3 weeks. They've got stiffer competition coming. But I'm really impressed by them and really impressed by Curtis Rourke. Elijah Surratt, I think it's Surratt. Big time receiver for them. And, Cross, another receiver, 6 catches, 90 yards. The running game was okay. They got some good holes, but man, overall, Really good performance by Indiana on offense, on defense, special teams. Just really, really impressed by Indiana going on the road, beating a team in conference. This is not a group of 5 team. This is a team with some Power 4 talent. So can't say enough about Indiana. Another team that I thought really, really did well, Nebraska. Nebraska, again, continues to roll. Northern Iowa, not a bad FCS team. FCS team, sure, but not a bad FCS team. And they shut them down, right? Held them to only 3 points. The defense, again, played really well. Dylan Raiola continuing to really progress as a quarterback. That passing game does look quite good with Raiola. He did throw a pick, and I thought Nebraska was a little flat, especially as they went to the second half. But in general, they are doing some really good things, and I'm impressed by Nebraska. I think they look really good, and I'm really excited to see them play. Another team that I thought looked pretty good this week was Illinois. Now, Illinois was, again, I thought they were flat, but it's different. There's a difference between being flat and still beating a team by 21 points versus being flat and almost losing a game, right? They played Central Michigan, and Luke Altmaier was steady, 242 yards. Pat Bryant, 7 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's going to be a fun matchup between Altmaier and Raiola next week. And so I thought Illinois was good. I thought they played well. Let's talk about Oregon. I have dogged Oregon. I picked Oregon State to beat Oregon, and mainly the reason why, it was no other reason than I didn't know if they would get it together this week. And I thought if they don't get it together this week, I think Oregon State could use the motivation from losing them as a conference opponent, motivation just for in-state rivalry, Civil War, and that could spell danger for the Ducks. The Ducks aren't in danger. Oregon they just turned it on in the second half. And quite honestly, Oregon State, they probably only should have gotten 7 because of the just bogus roughing the passer call, which we'll talk about poor performances. The refs, I feel like, are habitually in that could have done better category. We'll get to them. Oregon was everything I thought they would be. Now, granted, Oregon State, they're not going to be a great team this year. A lot of change at head coach, quarterback, all those pieces, have changed. And so, what do you glean from a performance like this? Here's what you glean. Oregon responded. The offensive line, which finally is healthy, I think got the right combination out there. They looked great. The defense looked just as dominating as that we thought they would be. And they really held Oregon State defensively, especially in that second half. Dylan Gabriel continuing to progress and really connect with his receivers in that offense. And they looked good in all 3 phases. So what my takeaway is Oregon's starting to look like the team we thought they might be. And if they continue to progress, they're going to be one of the top 2 teams in this conference. I know USC has looked good. I think Penn State looked good, right? Nebraska, Illinois, Rutgers. I think all those teams have looked good. And you're just talking about Indiana. Oregon, from a roster perspective, I think is unmatched to everyone in the conference except Ohio State. Now, here's the key. They've got to keep building. They can't rest on their laurels and think, well, we're good now, because they are going to have tougher tests and they're going to have a lot of road games. And just because other teams have not looked great doesn't mean that they can't get upset, especially in that 5-week stretch or 4-week stretch where they go on the road back and forth. So I think Oregon made a lot of good steps forward, right? Jordan James looked great in the running game. Defensively, they looked good. I think the lines are probably the biggest improvement for me, but they have got to keep going. They've got to keep progressing, because otherwise, if they start to fade back, it's going to be dicey. But I think they have the right combination of offensive line. I think this is their get well game, and I think you will see a steady progression. My expectation is they're undefeated going into the game against Ohio State on October 12th. I just, everything I saw is what I wanted to see from the Ducks. Really, really good for them. Another underrated performance is, I'll just highlight it for a minute. Northwestern, first half was abysmal, right? You're thinking, oh my gosh, this is Eastern Illinois. This ain't good. What are we doing? Second half, I think they found themselves a quarterback. Jack Lausch looked really good in the second half. AJ Henning had a breakout game, 7 catches for 117 yards and a touchdown. My goodness, that's, probably the breakout performance they've been looking for from a wide receiver. Cam Porter, again, had a really good day, averaged over 5 yards a carry, had a touchdown run. I think it's a really good sign to see this offense do anything explosive. 31 points. I know it's Northwestern and they're playing Eastern Illinois, but for Northwestern to do that, to me, that shows that they are starting maybe to figure some things out. I think ultimately, the switch to Lausch is going to be a good one. I know Mike Wright, he has some tools, but I do think Jack Lausch is the right call. And I think it showed, again, against subpar competition. But here's the thing that encourages me is that they dominated subpar competition in the second half, right? Outscored them 17-0. And I think that bodes well as, again, they start to build. They're going to have to string together some good offensive play if they're going to want to get to a bowl game, which I think is ultimately their goal this year, is they want to get to a bowl game. The way that the conference is shaking out this year, it's feasible. It is feasible. And we'll talk about some of those other games that they have, but they've got to have at least some sort of offensive production to help out what I think is an underrated defense. So I think good signs from the Wildcats. I'll highlight one more. And I know Terrapin fans, you know how I feel about Mike Locksley. Maryland played well. They were down 6-0, and then it was 13-7. I think, yep, Virginia's going to win. I picked Virginia to win at home. Billy Edwards had some nice throws. Had a really nice touchdown throw, I believe, to Caden Prather, that put him up ahead for good. The defense really responded, shut out Virginia in the second half. They've got a couple of running backs now in Hemby and Ray, who I think looked decent. Ty Felton continues to be a menace. 9 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Ty Felton, a lot of people are talking about Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams at Alabama, Wingo at Texas, kind of this youth movement and potential Biletnikoff award winners. Listen, don't sleep on Ty Felton, because that guy is having himself a year, and it's only 3 games in, close to 450 yards of receiving in 3 games. Like, he's averaging close to 150 yards a game. I think he's had at least a touchdown in every single game. So, like, this guy is having himself a year so far. He deserves some Biletnikoff buzz. I know he's not having the high profile games, but this dude's a stud, and he's playing himself. He's having himself a whale of a season so far. So that's who I would say has had the good games in the Big Ten. Let's go to some disappointing performances. I'll start with Wisconsin losing to Alabama. I was off by 3 on each team. I guessed 45-13. It was 42-10, and the game went about as I expected. Obviously prayers up for Tyler Van Dyke, who had a non-contact injury. I don't know as of recording what it was. It's non-contact. It was his knee. That never is a good sign. So I don't want to speculate, but I would not expect that it's a short-term injury. That being said, the game went about as I expected. Wisconsin stayed in it early. Alabama forced some mistakes. They got the fumble recovery when it was 7-3. Ches Malusi had a big run, but it was upended by a fumble. And they kind of just leaned on Wisconsin a little bit. Wisconsin really struggled to string together explosive plays. And then at the end of the half, it went from 14-3 to 21-3, and it was over. And at that point, Wisconsin just could not stop the avalanche. And Alabama controlled the game from that point. Couple things that I want to highlight. I've been dogging Luke Fickell a bit, and I want to try to be as sober-minded as possible with him. I thought Wisconsin did a few things well in this game. I thought at times the defense played better than I expected. In the first half, I thought they really did a good job of limiting explosive plays up until that last 36 seconds of the first half. I thought that the back seven played well. I thought the linebackers played really well, played the run well, and it's tough to contain a running game with a mobile quarterback. And listen, Jalen Milroe has really improved as a passer. I mean, he is deadly. Joel Klatt was talking about it all game long. His down the field accuracy. I just thought he was phenomenal in this game and has played much, much better. End of last season into this season, he has really, really become a good passer, especially down the field. And so for the back seven to do as well as they did in the first half, I thought the D-line played well. I thought the offensive line did a good job up front for Wisconsin. They were able to gash Alabama several times in the running game, which I thought was really good. So I thought there were good things about this. I also thought Luke Fickell was aggressive at times, right? They went for it on third. They went for a shot on third down. They went for it on fourth down. Like there were plays where Wisconsin didn't turtle, and they may not have gotten it, but I thought it was a good sign that Luke Fickell was aggressive, knowing that to stay in the game, they had to be aggressive. So those are a few nice things I want to say about the Badgers. I'm still very concerned about Luke Fickell. Let me talk about the aggressive plays, because I'm sure Badger fans are like, yeah, but the aggressive plays were in the wrong spot. I agree. I'm glad that he did it, because in previous spots, he has not been aggressive until it's been too late. But I don't think he managed the game well. I thought the first fourth down conversion, I get that you don't want to get your second string quarterback injured, but man, just run, like QB sneak that thing. Like make sure you get the first down. I thought on the play at the end of the half, I think it was 3rd and 5. This is before this, it's 14-3, and they go deep, which I'm like, I really like the deep shot idea. Don't do it on third down. Don't do it when it's 4 down territory and when you're on the cusp of your field goal kicker's range. Because what happens is, instead of running clock and being able to clock, if you don't get the first down and you don't like your option for fourth down, you can take a timeout or clock it with a few seconds left, leave Alabama no time to respond, and you kick a field goal. And at worst, it's 14-3, maybe 14-6. Instead, you go for it, you stop the clock, and not only that, you leave time, you miss the field goal, and now it's a 10-point swing the other way, and Alabama gets the ball back. Like it was poor management, poor complementary football. And instead of it being 14-6 or 14-10, or at worst 14-3, it's 21-3. And all the momentum's with the Tide. Like the game was over at that point. Like there's nothing that they were going to do. So I thought they were aggressive in the wrong spots. I think the other thing that just really concerns me is that that, Braden Locke is your number 2. He pushed Tyler Van Dyke all of camp. And he's not any better than he was a year ago. Like, he can't push the ball down the field. He really struggles to do that. He was inaccurate. Now I get it. He's cold coming off the bench, but I mean, he was really inaccurate. Like that really is a concern, and it's the reality is Tyler Van Dyke wasn't going to be much better. Right. Like he was playing okay, but like their game plan, it was a lot of short passing early when Van Dyke went out, and they were trying to do the same thing. They don't have the receivers to really get downfield. I think Will Pauling's really good as a slot guy, and he might be able to spring free. But here's my maybe overall concern is you want to run an air raid offense with a power run game. Your power run game wasn't great, and you didn't use it as much as I think you should have. Like perimeter runs were kind of gashing Alabama for a bit, and you didn't really use it that much, or you didn't use it well. I thought you're trying to be an air raid, but you don't have a quarterback that's accurate. You don't have receivers that can really beat guys deep. Like, why is this your offense? And so philosophically, I think it's not a good match. I don't think a lot of guys have developed from a year ago, which is a concern. And I just don't think Luke Fickell manages games well. And so I just, again, I hate to say it because I like Luke. I think he's a good guy. I'm not sure that he is Power 5 coach material. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he improves. I don't think this is me saying they shouldn't have gotten rid of Paul Chryst. Paul Chryst is part of the reason why the recruiting was not as good and they don't have the playmakers. But if you're going to change a culture, much like Matt Rule is changing a culture in Nebraska, you better be able to develop your guys. And I'm not seeing a ton of development. It feels like a year ago. And, some of the guys in the comments, they were saying, and on Twitter, they were saying, I compared him to Scott Frost. They're like, Scott Frost is not the right comparison. I really like their comparison that this is Rich Rodriguez 2.0. You're bringing in a completely different style of football to a place that doesn't match that culture. And I'm not sure they can match it. Like, they have to develop it. And right now they haven't developed it. And honestly, Luke Fickell has never been an air raid guy up until bringing in Phil Longo. So it just doesn't feel right. And I don't know if Fickell has to go back to the drawing board, if he fires Phil Longo and brings in a type of guy like someone at Michigan from a couple years ago, where you're like a Sharon Moore, where you're saying, hey, we're just going to be physical up front. That's who we're going to be. And we're going to go play action pass. That's the Wisconsin way. So I'm very pessimistic about the Badgers moving forward. Speaking of Michigan, I said I thought Michigan fans were not going to love this game against Arkansas State. Colston Loveland gets hurt. I don't know for how long he's going to be out. I don't know if it might just be short term. Your quarterback throws 3 picks. The defense in the second half really started to let some things go. And I think your fan base is divided, right? Half your fan base is like, well, it's second string. It's fine. It's garbage time, whatever. And other fans are like, Davis Warren, what are you doing? And we need to put in Jaden Davis and the running backs. Yeah, it's not great. And here's my take on it. My take is that there are good things. I think Khalil Mullings continues to show that he should be QB1. But I think at the same time, sorry, I if you heard that typing, I just got a text I had to very quickly respond to. But I thought Khalil Mullings looked good. I thought at times the receivers looked good. I thought the first wave of the defense was great against a team that they should be great against. Here's my concern. Donovan Edwards was Like, he had some good moments, but he's, still struggling. Davis Warren, 3 picks against that defense. Davis Warren should not be throwing 3 picks against that defense. That's not good. And again, he had good moments, but before people are like, well, JJ threw 3 picks against Bowling Green. JJ threw 3 picks against Bowling Green, and he had a massive resume to help ease fears up to that point. Davis Warren has thrown 6 picks in the past 2 weeks, guys. Come on. Like, let's be real, okay? He has not played well. He had some good moments, made some decent decisions. Sorry, 5 picks in the past 2 weeks. I had to fact check myself there. 5 picks in the past 2 weeks. That's not good. And then the other major concern I have is the depth on this defense. I get it. They allowed 15 points late. You had your backups in, whatever. Understand this. A year ago against backups, didn't matter who was playing. That depth was stopping people. You're going to need that depth against teams like Ohio State, like Oregon, like USC next week. And they don't got it. And we saw what happened against Texas. Guys got tired, put in your second wave, and they couldn't do anything. And your frontline guys get no rest, and they can't do anything. Now, Texas is going to do that to a lot of people. I think USC Michigan is going to be a lot tighter than probably people will want to admit, because I'm not sure how good USC is. I think they're good. Trojan fans, don't get on me. I think they're good. I don't think they're great. But I still think USC probably has an advantage because I'm really concerned about the depth. And I think the back seven, like Will Johnson, has not been elite so far. He's been really good. He's not been elite. He's struggled at times. So I'm concerned about Michigan. I'll touch on Iowa just really quickly. Iowa, there's some offensive progress. Troy should not score 21 on you. I'm concerned because this defense, which I thought was going to be a top 5 defense in the country, they ain't playing like it. And if they've got to win games by being balanced on offense and defense, and the offense has to help out the defense, I'm not sure Iowa's more than a 6 to 8 win team. Like that game against Minnesota, I picked Minnesota preseason, and then I was like, I don't know about that. I just don't know much about McNamara being able to carry a team against a much better opponent. By the way, Troy was 0-3. Troy is not a good group of 5 team. And you talk about issues, and it's explosive plays. That's the biggest problem. I mean, they lost to Memphis. They lost to Nevada. Troy did. And they put up 21, which is very similar to the amount of points they put up against Nevada and against Memphis. So this is not good. Iowa has some real issues, and I have very little confidence that Iowa can score in the 30s against Power 5 competition based on what I've seen. Now we'll see. I think next week will be a really good barometer for both Minnesota and Iowa, but I think that's something to watch out for. Washington. What is it with coaches thinking that it's a good idea to run option on the short side of the field on a gotta have it play? especially when you have a really, really good and big and physical running back who could just go up straight the middle and score a touchdown. There's a guy by the name of Jonah Coleman in your backfield, Jed Fish. Do you remember him? What are you doing? Oh, you know what? I'm going to run a slightly less athletic quarterback to the short side of the field so that linebackers for the Cougars can just flow to him and get to him. What are you doing? That game, by the way, if he scores that touchdown and gets a 2-point conversion, I would have been dead on that game. And so I'm a little upset about that because I would have had it dead on. And instead, Jed Fish pulls that stupidity. Oh, I'm a little upset. That game is squarely on that play call. And I saw some people afterwards saying Denzel Boston should have tried to dive. It was wet. I honestly, I saw him struggle to bring the ball in cleanly. And so I think people giving Denzel Boston some stuff for not diving in that. I don't think that's the right interpretation. You don't know if he's making sure that the ball is secure. And just think about it. If the ball is not secure and he dives and he fumbles that ball into the end zone, it's a touchback. So I really don't give him. I'm not blaming him for that at all. I think you've got to secure the ball, especially in wet conditions. And it just looked a little loose as he was trying to secure that ball and get around the corner. That game's on Jed Fish, on their lack of discipline. Just not inexcusable. Washington's the better team. Like they were the better roster. They were not the better team. But that game is squarely on Jed Fish as a coach, and that play call. Should have run the ball, go with your bell cow, go with one of the most underrated backs in the conference, and instead you pulled that stupidity. Did you not watch Northwestern Duke the week before? I mean, it's the same thing. 3rd and 1, what do? You run wide. Why? When you've got this powerhouse of the back in your backfield. Like sometimes you just outsmart yourself and it's just dumb. Sometimes just do this, like the simple thing. And at that point, if you're like, you don't get it, it's like, well, it was about effort at that point. Like we didn't get low enough. We didn't drive our legs enough. But man up. Speaking of manning up, I got to man up. I picked Purdue. Everybody on my show picked Purdue. JR from the Big Ten Huddle picked Purdue. My gosh, were we wrong? Oh my. Remember how I said I thought Purdue was going to be much improved this year? Whoo, boy. That was wrong. Wrong. They lost 66-7. Oh man, I was giving Luke Fickell grief. I got a feeling that Ryan Walters is a little bit over his skis on this one. Now, grant, Purdue's a tough place to win. And Ryan Walters is a young coach. But I thought, if anything, the defense would be ready to play. This is a Notre Dame team who offensively has struggled the first 2 weeks with a quarterback who is hurt. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass. And their offense looked like they were back in high school. Hudson Card looked like he regressed. I mean, he had no time. But my gosh, did he look terrible. That offensive line looked terrible. It was like, what, Purdue, what did you do with your bye week?
Traveling to see your fave sports team is cool. But traveling with Amex Platinum for the big game is even better.
Right this way.
With access to dedicated card member entrances at select events, you can skip the line.
And one.
And with access to the Centurion Lounge,
he shoots a three.
You can catch the next game on the way home. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
Excuse me, can you take a photo of me?
Sure, but if you had the new Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6, you could snap your own hands-free selfies.
Really?
Watch. I just flex it to the perfect angle, set it down, and FlexCam with Galaxy AI automatically zooms for the perfect shot.
Whoa.
Post-worthy.
New profile pic worthy.
Flex the newest Galaxy AI foldable Z Flip 6. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Samsung account login required. FlexCam length varies and is shorter than standard zoom length. Galaxy AI provided free until end of 2025 on supported devices.
Like this, it's inexcusable. And listen, I should have known better. I should have known better that Notre Dame would regroup after a loss to NIU. I should have known better. There's too much talent on this roster. And I should have known better when everybody started saying, well, maybe they're really bad and maybe they're not going to work things out and maybe this and that. I should have known better that Notre Dame would wake up and play better. It's still inexcusable for Purdue to be this bad. It was 42-0 at half. You had a bye week and you look completely unprepared, completely overmatched, like a deer in headlights. And I get it. Ryan Walters is a young head coach and he might need he may need some more time at a group of 5 program to kind of figure out how to be a head coach. Cause I think he's a bright young mind, but sometimes you need to be more than just a bright young mind. I mean, Marcus Freeman, who's on the other sideline, I think I wonder if he's in the similar boat because he can't keep losing to group of 5 teams and then do this. Like he's got to have more consistency than this, but man, Ryan Walters, he's got a lot of figuring out to do because this is unacceptable. Like it's different to get blown out, but this was a just pantsing, pardon the phrase, but I mean, they just got pantsed on national television. And it's going to take a while for Purdue to recover from this one, especially when Indiana was also on national TV and they blew the doors off of UCLA. I'll talk about UCLA really briefly. I think they are who they thought we were. They've got some nice pieces, but they're just a bit overmatched. And, I am concerned, similar to Ryan Walters, I'm concerned about Deshaun Foster being a brand new head coach at a Power 5 team, never having done it before. I'm concerned about him. Can he hack it? But I don't think that's the question right now, right? The question right now is, how do they get through this season and get some wins? And I don't necessarily mean wins in the win-loss column. I mean, how do you become a team that progresses throughout the season? They're going to have a rough season. I think we knew that, but I want to see how they progress. So I don't think we learned anything new about UCLA. I think we learned more about Indiana, but I would just say have patience with just Deshaun Foster. I still think have patience with Ryan Walters at Purdue, but it's a little different because Ryan Walters is in year 2. This is a big opportunity. And I mean, it was a faceplant. I think for UCLA, the context is different. I think we knew it was going to be a rough year. And I think Indiana is actually a pretty good team. And I thought they fought with Indiana for a little bit. So I think it's a little different. So, but still, it's going to be a rough year for Bruin fans. Let's get to power rankings and my playoff bracket. I'll start at the top. No, I'll start with the bottom. Purdue goes all the way to 18. Just unacceptable. It's an unacceptable performance. And UCLA is at 17 as well. I've got Northwestern at 16. I want to see that offense do it against someone else. Next week they play at Washington. I think that's going to be a pretty telling game for both those teams. I've got Wisconsin at 15. Again, I just don't know how good they are. And quite honestly, I don't think they're really good. And especially with Braden Locke now in, I just don't know what to expect with the Badgers moving forward. I have Maryland at 14. I'm being cautious with them because I don't think Virginia is very good, but again, to go on the road after a loss, I thought it was progress for the Terps. So good for them. I've got Minnesota at 13. I didn't talk about them. I will say this again. I perennially hate on Loxley and PJ Fleck. I thought PJ Fleck has managed the last couple weeks well, right? Darius, has let Brosmer really grow, try to throw downfield. I think they're going to have to throw downfield if they want to exploit Iowa next week. I think that's good, good movement. I would have liked to see more domination by Minnesota against Nevada, but they got up 27-0. They kind of shut it down a little bit. I think it's good. I think there's some good progress for the Gophers. I've got Washington at 12. They were the better roster, and they should have beat Washington State, but are really, undisciplined play and a dumb play call lost them the game. So got them at 12. Michigan State at 11. They did what you should do against Prairie View A&M. Again, I didn't know Prairie View A&M was a school, but got some development for Aiden Childs. The backs played well. Carter had a big run for a touchdown. Defense shut them out. So good on them. I really do. I think they are maybe going to be a little bit better than I expected this season. Number 10 is Indiana. And I could see an argument to move them higher into the top half of the conference. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait on it. I want to see how they do. Oh, they get Charlotte next week. They'll kill Charlotte. But I want to see how they do next week and how other teams do as well. But I've got them firmly at 10, and I think could easily be in the top half of the conference. 9, I have Iowa. And again, I think part of it is I'm adjusting expectations. But if they play like they have been, they will drop to the bottom half of this list. Same goes for Michigan. Michigan has not looked good. They have a tough game against USC at home next week. I think it might be tougher than people expect for if you're a Trojan fan, but that quarterback situation and the defensive depth continues to be a concern. And if they play a team that has a semi-good run defense, what do you do? Because I think Mullings had a big day, but what do teams do, or what does Michigan do when teams take away the run? I've got Rutgers at 7. Rutgers was on a bye, but I think Rutgers, again, I do think there are some really good things happening there. Curious about the defense. Can they kind of patch some holes? They go to Virginia Tech next week. Big game for them. Illinois at 6. Again, they've just been steady every week. And granted, their win against Kansas doesn't look nearly as good with Kansas losing at UNLV. But I do think that Illinois has looked really solid defense. I think their run game has been solid, not great, maybe not even good, but solid. Altmaier is playing really well. I really think Altmaier is really good. And I think Pat Bryant's an underrated receiver. So really good. And I think that back end for Illinois is going to be a really good test for Nebraska, who's my number 5 team. Nebraska at number 5. I think they are very good on defense. Very good on defense. And I think that's borne out the way they played against Colorado last week. I know they're not very good, but good quarterback, good receivers. I don't know if they're the top, their top 4 receivers are the best in the country, ESPN or whoever, CBS, whoever was on the call. Have you seen Alabama and Ohio State and Oregon? Come on now. But they did stop a good quarterback and really good receivers a week ago. So I like this defense. I thought Raiola, again, has played well. They haven't put too much on him, but he's elevating that team. I think the running game has been solid. I have them at 5. Penn State slides to 4. They were on a bye, but I want to see how they respond this week against Kent State. I bumped Oregon to 3. Again, and they'll bump to 2 if they continue to show progress. They're really good. When they're clicking, they are a national championship contender. And I don't know if I would say that about USC and Penn State right now. But I think both of those teams are playoff teams or playoff. They would be in the playoff as of now. They're not national championship contenders yet. Oregon is when they play this way. And if they continue to do that, they'll get to number 2 and maybe even surpass my number 1 team. Number 2 is USC. They were on a bye, and they have been really good. I think a test on the road against Michigan next week, I think it's going to tell us more about USC. And number 1's Ohio State. Again, they have looked, again, subpar competition, but roster top to bottom is the best I've seen in the Big Ten. And I would put them against, I think, Texas and Georgia and Alabama right now. I think they've been really good. That would be where I would land with my power rankings. Let's talk about the playoff, and I'll do my first 4 out first. I have Notre Dame in my first 4 out. If they play like they did against Purdue the rest of their schedule, and they beat USC at the end of the season, or even if they lose but they go 10-2, I think it's going to be tough. It'll be tough to justify them getting in, but at 10-2, they might be able to sneak in. Their schedule is not great, but especially if they beat USC, I think they have a pathway back, especially after what just happened. Utah at number 11. Sorry, I'm still on my first 4 out. Now you know my number 11 team. Other 3 that are first 4 out. Clemson, who I think, I don't think the ACC is going to get another team in just because of how awful the conference has been. Missouri, I have out right now. I thought they looked a bit suspect against a plucky Boston College team. I think Boston College is decent. I don't know if they're a top 25 team. And Missouri they struggled quite a bit in the first half against Boston College. So I've got them out. And I have Georgia first 4 out. Now, before, people are like, Georgia had a bad game, whatever. They had a lot of injuries, what have you. Their schedule's brutal. It's really brutal. And if they play that way throughout the rest of their schedule, they will get beat multiple times. And I just don't know. If they're 9-3, even with their schedule, I just don't know if they're going to get in, especially with all the other SEC teams that I think are going to get in. Let's go to my playoff bracket. Number 12, Boise State. They didn't play. I do think they have some teams that could really challenge them for that spot. Boise looked great against Oregon in a loss. I think they have other games where they can kind of prove themselves. I think they have one of the best players in the country in Ashton Gianti at running back. But watch out for Toledo. Watch out for Northern Illinois, obviously, because they beat Notre Dame. Watch out for UNLV, who just beat Kansas. I think those are 3 group of 5 teams to watch out for. But I like Boise. I think at the end of the day, I like Boise State's path the best. Utah at 11. I dropped them from winning the Big 12 because of injury concerns and because I think that there's another Big 12 team that might be a little bit better. I do think Utah gets in the playoff. I think they'll end up either 10-2 or 11-1. And I think the relative parity of the Big 12 will actually give some credence to adding a second team from the Big 12. Number 10, I have Penn State. Penn State, I think their schedule works out favorably for them. I think they'll at worst be 10-2. And I think they'll get into the playoff there, although I think it'll be an away playoff game because I think their schedule is probably not is going to be as good as some of the other teams that are higher up. Number 9, I have Oregon, but that is, again, that's for now. If they continue to progress and look, they will probably have a home playoff game in my mind, or they'll have the Big Ten automatic bye. USC at 8, they will have a home playoff game in this bracket. I like USC. They beat LSU in a neutral site game. I think that gives them an edge from a seeding perspective. Here's where I think it gets really interesting. I don't have Georgia in. I have Ole Miss at 7. I have Alabama at 6, and I have Tennessee at 5. Ole Miss and Tennessee look just unconscionable on offense. I mean, and I know it's Kent State, but my gosh, Tennessee was just murdering Kent State. I think it was like 63-0 at half. I've never seen a score like that in my lifetime. So and Tennessee and Ole Miss have a bit more of a favorable schedule. I think Alabama offensively is going to be a problem. That Ryan Williams kid is a problem. And remember, one of the things that I thought Wisconsin was decent at, I thought their back 7 was good. Ricardo Hallman, Hunter Roller, good defensive backs. I mean, they were just, they were really able to free up, and I thought they played well. I think Jalen Milroe, like he's really good. Like that's a good, good offense. They have some good pieces on defense. They're not going away. They're not going away. All right. Number 4, I have Kansas State as my Big 12 champion. I really liked what I saw against Arizona. I think Avery Johnson you can see why they wanted to start him. He's got a lot of raw tools, but he's young and he's going to need to continue to progress, but their schedule works out really well for them so that by the end of the season, he has enough reps to really have some maturity. And I think they're the number 4 seed. Number 3, I have Miami. Again, nothing new there. Number 2, I have Ohio State. And number 1, I have Texas. That's my playoff bracket for now. Something will happen next week where we blow it all up and I'll have a brand new one next week. So thanks for listening, guys. I will have Kurt from SkyU Pod, who is maybe the exact opposite of Eric and DK. It'll be a lot more mellow, but I think good analysis, and we'll get some really good insight for the Iowa-Minnesota game next week. Make sure, again, I know I said this at the beginning of the pod, like, subscribe, especially on YouTube. I am promoting myself. I don't like to do it, but I'm promoting myself. If you like the channel, subscribe, help get the algorithm going. We've had some really good success over the past couple months. Keep it up. And make sure you share with your friends, share it with the people that are college football nuts. And yeah, I'd love to, if you leave a comment, I'll try to respond. Sean, Rutgers guy, you've been in my comments and reminding me of people back on the Shiano tree. And of course, I always got to shout out my guy, Yankee Wolverine, who is, I don't know how you have the time to listen to all these podcasts, man, but you are always in tune with what we've got going on here. And of course, my guys, the Ebersols, appreciate you all. Thanks for listening, for watching. I appreciate your support. Again, subscribe, if this is your first time to the channel, please do so. Thank you for listening. Take care. God bless.